Hi, how can we help your business to streamline your analytics? My name's Mark Bowden, and I've recorded this video to give you an overview of what we do at Cobalt Beach and how it could help you to streamline the analytics and reporting processes within your business and give you better insights from your data more easily. I hope you find it useful, and please feel free to get in touch if you've got questions. This is an example of the sort of data that we quite often see from our clients at the start of a process. As you can see, it's a large amount of information. It's been organised into comma-separated values. It's incredibly difficult to do anything materially with this in its raw format, although the good news is it is fairly easy to bring this at least into Excel. So many of our clients may receive data like this from legacy systems that they have, maybe from their ERP systems or their manufacturing systems, and this becomes the input into what we build. So you can see if I open that same file in Excel, it's immediately slightly more intelligible. You can start to see Excel has chopped the file up based on the commas and created a series of columns of data. And often this is what businesses are doing manually each month. So you can see here we need to do a little bit of work just to make the dates a bit legible, but we've got some date information, we can see customer information, product information. And then typically what we see is our clients will take this as an input and then start manipulating it within Excel. So obviously Excel provides lots of functionality. It's very easy to just identify that this actually is a set of data and to filter it, and then they're able to start to do something useful and look at individual customers, for example. And from here, typically what we'll see will be that they'll take this as an input, and then there will be a series of Excel-based dashboards, and this data will then get loaded in and perhaps pasted into a master spreadsheet. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's even once a day, pasted into a master spreadsheet to drive all of those graphs and charts. But of course, being Excel, it's also incredibly easy to accidentally do that and overtype a number. Maybe with something that makes no sense like I've just done there, but what if I take this 48 and accidentally overtype it with 47? How will we ever know that that data is wrong? We won't. It's not very easy to find, and it becomes very, very difficult. So fairly routine things can happen that could cause that. You may just get distracted partway through loading the data up. Maybe you try and copy and paste, and actually, unfortunately, you only copy that part instead of the rest of it. You miss some records out, or the cat jumps on the keyboard, or whatever else it is. So it is always a risk. The other thing that's always a risk working in Excel is, of course, I could now open this up. I've got all the contacts, all the customer details in here, all of the individual orders for each customer, and what products they bought at what price. I could then just simply file, share onto an email, and I could send it straight to the competition. Obviously, that's not very good for data security either. So we tried to move away from all of that. And what we tried to do is replace all of this manual data manipulation that's required in order to produce any charts with a highly automated process that just does all of that automatically straight from those raw files we started with and take out all of the work with Excel. The thing we'll typically try to do is to upload all of the raw data files straight into the Microsoft Azure environment. And generally we'll build an automated process to do that so that it just runs automatically every single day, updating all of the raw data and copying it into Azure ready to be used before humans even arrive at work. So once we've got the data into the Azure environment, we'll build a data factory. And this is an example of one we've built previously. So this is made up of a series of what are called pipelines. Each pipeline is the process by which we bring in and standardize one particular type of data. So here we see the pipeline that imports customers into our database. And you can see it's a very visual editor. There's lots of steps that you can see here, and you can click into each one and have a look at them. So if I take one of these steps here and open it up, you'll see in itself there are then a whole series of other pieces of logic that we apply. And this is a highly standardized process that we build, and each of these steps undertakes particular activities. So they may be as simple as sorting the data, they may be creating IDs if required to standardize how those are stored, or they may be going away and looking up information. So finding out, for example, is this a new customer or is this one we've seen previously? Before finally mapping it all into a highly standardized customer table so that all of the information we've got has the same names. And that's particularly important because quite often there may be data coming into an organization from several different systems. And maybe the field names are slightly different, and maybe the values in the fields are slightly different. There may be different ways of encoding what type of customer they are, or what currency it's in, or all sorts of other bits of information. And what we do is a process called conforming the data, where we standardize all of that encoding and we standardize all of the structures so that we bring it all together. And by bringing it all together, it then provides us with a single clean presentation layer, which we can start to take some dashboards from and actually start to get some meaningful insight. So all of this process is built once and then runs completely hands-free, completely automatically in the background, and it can run every day, it can run every month, but quite frankly, it can also run in near real time or every hour or whenever else is required. So once we've built that presentation layer within a database in Azure, we're then able to hook up a tool called Power BI, which is Microsoft's data visualization tool. And in this view, this is a simplified view of how the database looks as seen by Power BI. So you can see that we've got quite a highly structured database, although this is a fairly simple one, so not too many different tables. But you can see that the orders we looked at earlier on have been connected up to contacts to understand the customers, but also to products. And products themselves have been broken down to materials, which then go on to understanding the raw material costs. So it's possible to tie all different sorts of data together. And you'll also see we've got a table here of sales transactions, which also links back to orders. So that's how the data then looks when we bring it into Power BI. But really the interesting bit becomes when we start to build some dashboards. So this is an example of a dashboard that we've authored from this data. And you can see we've got a number of important business metrics. So along the top of the page, we've been able to provide some total credit and debit numbers based on the values coming and going through the transactions in the bank account. And from that, we're able to accumulate over this period what the cash at bank should be, so the cumulative difference between those two. We've also graphed that in the top right to show how the cash balance is moving, and we're showing monthly the debits and credits in the top left. Furthermore, we can break down the debits or the credits by type, by contact, by industry, and all sorts of other things. So we have some other graphs at the bottom here that start to give a few insights into that. So, perhaps the finance director wants to understand where the expenditure is going. Well, you can immediately see here 75% of the outgoing money is going in cost of goods sold, so raw materials. A further 12.8% is going in wages payable. So you can immediately start to see, okay, so that's kind of production costs in there. But actually, if you wanted to understand, are we spending too much on our software? You can immediately see that's 3.16%, or 2.27% is being spent on advertising and marketing. Similarly, over this side, we can see on the right the different customers. It's very clearly possible to see which customers are generating the largest amount of income over this period, or the largest value of sales over this period. And we've actually color-coded these based on the type of business that they are. And these dashboards are interactive. So you might, for example, observe that there's a big spike in both credits and debits in November and wonder what's going on. You can just click on November and you'll see straight away it filters all the data on the dashboard to focus on that time period. And then you can start to have a look and see what's going on. So something that you might immediately find interesting in that case is that there's a customer here where nearly all of their business has happened in that month. And equally, some of the other customers perhaps are lower than you might expect. So that kind of information is very, very easy to get at. Similarly, you might decide to ask a question about individual customers. So you might say, this customer here, how's that been going? You can click on it and straight away you can see credits coming in from the customer fairly steadily through the year until we get to October. And then actually perhaps slightly worryingly, no sales in November or December. So that might be a prompt to take some action. So you can see it's very easy to just be able to click on things to start to drill in and understand the detail of what's going on. You might want to, for example, be able to see how wages are looking over the year. Again, you can just click. You can see here the component of the total debit that makes up wages has remained fairly constant. You can also see that the cost of raw materials, unsurprisingly, has broadly kept in track with the value of sales. So that's one page of the dashboard, but these dashboards can have multiple pages, and they may be different pages that provide related information, or perhaps they may actually be different pages that are appropriate for different viewing communities. So this is a great high-level dashboard that perhaps the board might want to look at, but maybe the sales director might be more interested in something like this that shows for each customer how they have ordered, how many units they've ordered, and also when they've made their payments. And from that, we can derive more interesting statistics. So we have in this business a 3% target for our average margin. We can see this customer is at 4%, so clearly that's a good thing. And on average, it's taking them 7.98 days to pay between raising the order and paying the invoice. So that's great, but perhaps we might look at another one and say, a bit more of a mixed picture. Because here we've got a 6% margin, which is fantastic, but it's taking them 25 days to pay. So perhaps a little conversation is required with the credit control team there. There are other ways you can look at this data as well. Perhaps rather than seeing financial year basis, maybe fiscal year is interesting. Perhaps you want to focus really closely on the credits coming in. And here you can see we've mapped it onto a map of the world. So you can actually start to see which countries are generating the income. You can see the individual transactions here. Perhaps you want to do the same with expenses. And this can obviously be really useful both ways around. If you've potentially got exposure to parts of the world where there may be political or reputational issues emerging as a result of international situations, or also if you maybe want to understand where there might be risk from currency fluctuations. So you can start to see there are a number of reasons why you might want to do that. If you're a UK-centric business, you can do exactly the same thing. You just map everything onto a postcode map of the UK and colour in the bits maybe where you are most busy, or show dots to show where you're most busy. So that kind of information is really helpful. You might, for example, want to be able to compare a breakdown of the suppliers, which is data that was sitting behind what we saw on the front screen, wasn't necessarily explicitly broken out, and the customers, to start to see quite quickly at a glance who are your most important suppliers and most important customers. An alternative view of the same sort of information, and you'll see on this one we've got what's called a tornado chart that shows the debits and credits stacking up on each month. But actually also, and this is quite a cool feature, actually what we've got here is an AI written narrative. So it's immediately looking at all the data that's making up this page and pulling out some key stats and which numbers are perhaps out of line with normal. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily in a state that you'd want to use it in lieu of any kind of manually written summary to the board, but it is a really good way of prompting. Actually, these numbers maybe might need a little bit further explanation, or perhaps it's worth drilling into it a little bit further. And all of these numbers are also clickable, so you can actually drill right in, and it explains where the number came from. So in this case, this is telling us it's the month name with the highest total debit, that you can actually drill in and see this was the lowest debit value. So you can understand the definitions very easily. So that's a feature that is appropriate for some uses. It is quite cool. It is improving all the time as Microsoft's natural language processing capability improves. So you can see here what you've got is a dashboard that's very easy to use, but it's still within a very specialized tool within Power BI, which obviously comes at a license cost. It's probably not something that you want to train all your staff to use. But the great thing about it is from here, we can publish it. You can publish it up onto a interactive web page, which can then be embedded in a variety of different places. So most often we would embed that within the Teams environment, which obviously comes with great native security and allows you to really control the access. But if it's appropriate, you can literally publish it as a public and publicly accessible dashboard, or you can publish it on an intranet page and control per user level who has the ability to look at the dashboard, who has the ability to interact with the dashboard, and who, if anyone, has access to extract data from it. So it's much more secure. And if someone who has access to the dashboard takes that link and emails it to someone who is not authorized to see it, they will simply land on a web page that tells them they're not authorized to see it and they need to request access. So you immediately close down a significant route by which data can leave the organization accidentally. So that's obviously a big bonus as well, but really fundamentally, the greatest benefit of having your data into a dashboard like this, if you compare this to the files we started with at the beginning of this video, is you can see how much easier this is to start to ask business questions about what may be going on and to zero in on anomalies and oddities and start to really understand what's causing them, compared to starting with very raw data and maybe having to ask them to go and produce that analysis manually, which might take them several days to do, may take them away from their day job while they're doing it. And actually, if it's a time-sensitive question, the moment for that may have passed, because all of this data can be refreshed daily, but it can be refreshed hourly, near time, real time, if appropriate. So you can have a highly automated system where a dashboard like this is just available within Teams to your people when they come in the morning. Finally, if you'd like to see an example that you can actually interact with of the dashboard. Once it's in a web page format, you can find it on our website. So go to cobaltbeach.com, scroll down, and you will find our sample dashboard. And this is exactly how this dashboard would display if it was embedded within Teams or in your own web application, either for internal or external use. And now clearly this is made up dummy data, so we are choosing to share it on our website. But obviously for your internal data, you'd want to control access more securely. You wouldn't have public access on it, and you wouldn't place it on an externally viewable site. But what you can see is exactly as I showed you when I was authoring this in Power BI. I can click on things and it responds. And you'll see it's just as fast and just as responsive, even though this is being hosted on Microsoft Cloud and then fed across and embedded in our own website. And you can see all of the other pages are still here, and all the rest of the information is available. So that's an example of how it could be used. As I say, typically you would embed that internally, and for many of our clients, they would embed a web page like this within their Teams environment so that they can ensure that the right people have access to the right pages of the dashboard, and they would share different views of the dashboard into different parts of their teams. And that might even include filtering it by customer or by groups of customers, so that, for example, sales teams are able to see the sales report for their customers, but not for other customers. So hopefully that's given you a really good overview of how we do all of our dashboarding. And if you're interested and you'd like to talk some more, come to our website, cobaltbeach.com, and you'll see right at the top, there's a button here, book your free diagnostic call. If you click on that, you can come through, you can book a call in, and we'll be happy to talk to you about your requirements and let you know how we can help you. Thank you very much for watching.